So sometimes atheists will say atheism doesn't make any claims, it's just a disbelief. But in this video, we're going to do two things. Number one, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define what atheism actually is, the formal standard definition of atheism. And then number two, we're going to talk about, is atheism only a disbelief, or does disbelieving in something actually mean that you have a belief? Let's go. So the definition of atheism is the disbelief or lack of belief in God or gods, meaning that you disbelieve in the existence of any God whatsoever. The Hindu God, the Christian God, the Buddhist God, the Muslim God, any God. Next, I'm going to show you how every non-belief actually can be proven to be a belief. And here are some examples. Number one, and you can follow along up above if you'd like. Saying I do not believe in Bigfoot is the same as saying I believe that Bigfoot does not exist. Saying I do not believe in unicorns is the same as saying I believe unicorns do not exist. Saying I do not believe in aliens is the same as saying I believe aliens do not exist. Saying I do not believe in leprechauns is the same as saying I believe leprechauns do not exist. Saying I do not believe in the tooth fairy is the same as saying I believe that the tooth fairy does not exist. Saying I do not believe in Santa Claus is the same as saying I believe that Santa Claus does not exist. And finally, saying I do not believe in God is the same as saying I believe that God does not exist. It's not saying that you're sure, it's just saying that you believe. You believe it. So anytime you say that you disbelieve in something or you don't believe in something, that's the same as saying that you believe that thing does not exist. This is basic logic. And this is part of the beauty of T, the Eliot argument, is that when atheists take the atheism stance, and they say, I deny or disbelieve that a God of any kind exists, they leave themselves with only two incorrect options for the existence or the origin of the universe. And both options have been defined so broadly that a third option can logically never be presented. That was the entire point of it. And the two options that they are left with can be shown to be illogical, irrational, and incorrect. So atheists have this problem where they can't understand the difference between disbelief and belief. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to define the two, disbelief and belief. We're going to define both of them, and then we're going to find out actually if it is true that they are each other's opposites. Let's first have a look at disbelief, shall we? Disbelief is defined as the inability or refusal to accept that something is true or real. Now, if you would, please look down here at the bottom left corner. The definition of belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. So one is the refusal to accept that something is true, and the other is the acceptance that something is true. So if you haven't already figured it out, belief is the opposite of disbelief. And if you want further proof of this, look down here in the bottom right corner. You go on Google and type, what is the opposite of disbelief? And clearly you will see the answer is belief or credence. So belief is the opposite of disbelief. Nice and simple. Sorry, atheists, you lose again. Let me help you guys understand something. Atheism is the disbelief that a God or gods exist. And disbelief is to refuse that something is true. This means that atheism is the refusal to accept that a God or gods exist. And when you refuse to accept that a God or gods exist, you're refusing to accept that a God or gods could be responsible for the origin of the universe. And when you refuse that a God could be responsible for the origin of the universe, you leave yourself with only two incorrect, irrational, and illogical options. It's not my fault. It's just a fact. Let's talk about refusal versus acceptance. Disbelief is defined as refusal, and belief is defined as acceptance. But neither one, belief or disbelief, are claims about absolute knowledge. Therefore, it would be quite different to say something like, the abominable snowman certainly exists, as opposed to just saying, I believe that an abominable snowman exists. That shouldn't be too hard to understand. Now with that out of the way, a person who says, I disbelieve that a God exists, is the same as saying, I believe that a God does not exist. You can understand this fact more clearly when I slide in the formal definitions to replace the actual terms. Let's have a look. I refuse that a God exists is the same as saying, I accept that a God does not exist. And for the low IQ people in the back, here's why. The claim I refuse that a God exists literally breaks down to I am not willing to accept that a God exists. And the claim, I accept that God does not exist, literally breaks down to, I am not willing to accept that God exists. Literally the exact same thing. You see, if you accept something does not exist, that's the same thing as refusing to accept that it does. This is how we show that every disbelief is actually a belief. And atheism is the refusal to accept that a God or gods exist. When a person takes such a logically absurd position, they are easily refuted. Have a good day, fellas.